listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft and people who play it. Today is February 14th, 2023, and my name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to the show. I'm joined today, as always, by my co-host, Jason Lucas. Jason, we're like at our old school time today.
I know. This is 2 weeks in a row doing the Tuesday evening thing. It's like, it's nice, actually, I think. It's like putting on a comfortable old pair of pants or something.
Well, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. And you know why? Because today is Uncapped Valor and Conquest Day. We've been waiting a couple months, and it's finally here. And it's nice. It's just, you can go get as much of that stuff as you want. Go upgrade whatever items you can afford to upgrade, and you don't have to do this weird calculus of like, all right, how much can I get this week, and like what's the most important upgrade, and like what's the most bang for my buck on these upgrades, and like what item might I get to replace this that would then waste this currency that I'm spending. You don't have to do that now. Yeah. And if you do as many dungeons as contribute to your Great Vault, then you get Valor all the way up, and then you can use it to upgrade your drops, and it's nice. I would like to see it come in a little bit earlier in the season going forward, but I'm glad that it's gone, and I think it's going to make dungeons and stuff feel really good this week for me. I'm sure for PvPers, the lack of Conquest Cap is going to feel nice. If you're trying to catch up, or you just have a bunch of gear you've amassed and haven't been able to afford to upgrade, or you get a fresh level 70 and you want to do stuff, this is awesome. So I think that's the biggest thing going on in the game this week, is that we are unshackled from, these currency caps.
Yeah, it's nice to finally be here, as you said. I like always feeling like I'm gaining a benefit for doing content, regardless of what it is. It always feels bad to me when I roll an M+, and you get, your 10 in for the week, and you want to do 2 or 3 more, but there really isn't a benefit left for you outside of, hey, this might be fun if we are like doing something where I might also get rating. Like I don't know, I have that mentality of that mythic raider where you kind of want everything you're doing to be efficient and effective and working towards something. And as long as you're in that headspace, it's hard to just sit back and enjoy the experience a lot of the time. So yeah, it's nice to be.
Yeah, and the frustrating thing is that the game encourages you to do up to 8 keystones a week for maximum choices in your vault, but if you were getting like bonus Valor from increasing rating, then you're gonna hit that. You were gonna hit that Valor cap after like 4 dungeons. So you're doing 4 dungeons where you're not getting that incremental reward. Which is one of the coolest parts of the system. Is like, okay, I can collect this stuff at any item level. It kind of grows along with me as I do harder content or whatever. I can invest time into character power, and that's like a very old school notion for WoW gearing in a lot of ways. So, yeah, it felt bad, especially Season 4, there was no cap, right? Which, obviously, Season 4 is experimental. It was short. It was kind of a thank you for sticking around and doing Shadowland stuff. So it wasn't the model going forward, but, man, the way it felt to just not have those caps in place at all, and you just do whatever you want, and you get the currency, and you use it how you want to, felt really great. So that might have contributed as well to the cap going back up for Season 1. And even though it was only up for 9 weeks or 10 weeks or something, which isn't really that long in the grand scheme of things, it just felt terrible because we had Season 4.
Yeah. Well, there was an American sporting event that happened this past weekend, Jason. Did that affect your raid schedule at all?
It did. It massively did. We lost an entire raid night because of Super Bowl stuff. But I put it out there. I asked people to sign up because what I didn't want to do was try to twist people's arms and say, okay, log on. We're doing this. We're playing the video game. Like, you better be here. Like, I don't want to do that to people. Right. Yeah. And I also don't want to put myself in the spot of, well, I'm going to raid with whoever shows up, and then I can't plan my Sunday evening. Right. Yeah. Because I might set everything aside to sit down, and then there's nobody to play anyway. And what a giant waste of my time and these other few people's. Right. So, yeah. In this case, I only had a small handful of signups, and Saturday night I just said, you know what, we're not going to do it. See you next week. And so I only had 2 nights, but it was pretty productive. Tuesday we ended up doing 7 of 8 heroic. That's kind of what we've been doing, is trying to blast through 7 of 8 heroic and 1 of 8 mythic. So we did that, and we actually had a little bit of time left, which was nice, just get an early start on dungeons and stuff. Wednesday, we one-shot Mythic Council for the first time, which was really good, because that was a huge time saver to only have to, look at that one time. And that fight's starting to feel a lot better every time we do it, which is a good sign. Then we had the whole rest of the night on Resogatz, Heroic, which was going pretty well. I mean, we sort of had that regression the previous time we looked at it, where we were struggling in phase 1 and we were missing, one or two key people that kind of help us carry the group. And that didn't feel great, and it always feels bad kind of having that night of regression or at the very least, like you're not making progress. It feels kind of tough to walk away from that. So it was nice to come back in there strong last week, and we were getting consistently through into phase 2. And then we started getting through phase 2. I wouldn't say consistently, but several times we got through phase 2 with a decent amount of the raid alive and got into second intermission and almost got to the point where we were getting through second intermission. But, you start having those attrition deaths and then you get behind. So that's kind of where we ended up. Sunday would have been probably full res prog if it happened, but it didn't. So that's where we ended up. I feel pretty good about it. It's not a really too bad of a fight, I think, to work on Heroic Prog 4. It is a big ramp up from the rest of the dungeon, though, I feel like, or the raid instance, I should say. Like, it's a different level of complexity, numbers checks, and punishing mechanics compared to even, like, I don't really think Broodkeeper is that hard of a fight at the 7th boss, Your egg team has to know what they're doing, but it's not mega taxing on everybody the way Resogatz is. So it's a bit shocking, compared to the difficulty of the rest of the place. And that's why we prioritized, 2 of 8 Mythic first, because those bosses were just easier to do. Yeah. So that's, that was raid. This week, as we record today is Valentine's Day, and I think that it's going to impact my raid attendance. So I don't know what's going to happen tonight. It might be another 2-night raid week, but we'll talk about it in a bit. But we got some Raz nerfs come in, and I think we're just in full prog mode until we put it down. So we'll probably extend or whatever makes sense when we have a viable group. So yeah, it's, this is sort of the timeline that I was kind of hoping for, honestly. When I saw the discrepancy, shall we say, in kill rates from Broodkeeper to Resogatz, and then the kill rates of, Mythic Aeronog, Mythic Primal Council, it's like, okay, something is out of whack here. Like, Resogatz is just too hard, and it will get nerfed, so why don't we make progress in some other directions and get some more powerful gear first, and then we'll start really putting the time in as they sort of smooth Raz out, and that's what's starting to happen this week. So I mean, I think we're pretty close, and they're definitely shaving off some of the most punishing parts of the fight. So I'm looking forward to getting in there this week for sure.
Yeah. The hotfixes that we're going to talk about later in the show are pretty substantial on Resogatz. So I definitely think that they've hit their window of, okay, we still aren't at this number yet. Release the next wave of nerfs. Like, let's get this boss dead for people.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's starting to get a little late in the season.
Yeah.
We got a .7 patch on PTR. It's, it's mid-February. Some people that I play with are getting a little nervous, right, about being able to meet their end-of-season goals. I think it's a little premature to be nervous, but, we are probably about midway through the season, if not farther. So it's worth keeping in mind. Speaking of stuff to do for the season, I got my first plus 20 in time.
Yay.
Last week, which was Court of Stars. It was funny because last week I was like, 20s really aren't feeling that great. Feels like, I'm just plateauing hard around 18s or 19s. And then a couple hours later, we ended up timing a plus 20. But last week was a pretty good week. I didn't play a lot, and I think I probably could have gotten, we had like one other doable key that I think people did without me. Shadow Moon Burial Grounds, I think somebody had. So cool to see people that I play with knocking over 20s, and I'm sure we'll get there. It's just a matter of putting the time in and having the practice. But now we're sort of getting to a point where if you're timing 20s and you're bricking 21s and 22s, then you're starting with 20 keys for the week and what have you. So it makes it that much easier, on a shorter time budget to get them in. I'm getting close to 2,500 rating, which is pretty cool. But yeah, last week I had a pretty good week with Keystones. It felt pretty nice. So that was great. other than that, I got to be honest, I really am just not playing WoW outside of scheduled play with the guild time.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't finish aiding the Accord last week. I just didn't bother to do it because I didn't care.
Right.
The rewards just really aren't there. If you've gotten all the way through the renown systems and everything, if you've done all your profession stuff for the week and you play on kind of a low volume server where it's not like there's opportunities to get your professions into play, right? Which you can make gold, or you could maybe get some knowledge or whatever, get some skill ups. But there's just kind of nothing that feels like it's worth doing. Now, granted, I put an obscene amount of time into the first like month and a half of the expansion. And so I'm done with the renown system and everything like that, right? I understand this, but yeah, just really not feeling the pull to get in there outside of like time to play with my friends. One thing I will say is earlier today, I did my reset lap on my warrior, and I kind of wanted to play the monk. And I did some world quests, and I got actually some item level upgrades from the world quests, because that's kind of where my monk is at. I haven't done anything with the character yet. And I realized, like, I'm banking up the charges on the catalyst, and I don't have any other gear on this tune to catalyze. I should go grind the primal storms and stuff and at least get like 2-piece going on this guy. I got the charges. All I got to do is put a little time in. So when I did the 2 storms that were up, they expired at the top of the hour, and new ones didn't spawn. And the event that spawns in the Primalist Future wasn't up for another 2 hours or 3 hours, which was a point in time where I couldn't play. Yeah. So it was like I was finally in the mindset to do some grinding, and it wasn't available. And that rotating schedule is just it's really bumming me out about, there's so much good stuff in Dragonfly, but I just have to be real with you and with the audience. Yeah. Like the rotating schedule just kills it for me. Like when I'm in the mindset and I'm in the mood to go do it and it's not available, like what is the point of this? Maybe let's cut the cooldown down a bit. Like just reduce all the gaps down. Do things really need to be 4 or 5 hours apart? Do things need to have this long of a rotation between them? I want to log in and play and kill stuff and get rewards, and I would be a lot closer to where I wanted to get with that tune today if the stuff was turned on for me to go do. So it was just kind of summed it up for me. I spent the last couple of weeks really not feeling like doing this stuff on an alt, and then today I kind of had the inspiration. I was like, let's go do something. Let's go get a 2-piece, and I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a bummer.
That's a bummer. No, I agree. Any kind of system like that has the rolling time, the rolling starts for it that are spaced out too far runs into that, risk. Runs into the risk of maybe someone has 3 hours to play or 2 hours to play, and in that window of time, the thing they want to do is just endings, they just missed it, or just, 3 hours away when they only have 2 hours, or they have 3 hours and it's going to start just as they're having to log off and go do something else. So it's a risk they run into, and I hope that they see that having so many things linked to those sorts of schedules is probably a bad idea. Having something that's a 1 time a week large reward that's linked to something like that makes sense. Having, so many of them linked that way is probably not the wisest way to go. So we'll see what they choose to do, but, hopefully they hear the feedback on that. All right, let's hop into what's going on this week in World of Warcraft. All right, this week is the Burning Crusade Time Walking event, which means the Sign of the Twisting Nether buff is up, increasing Burning Crusade reputation gains from combat and quests by 50%, as well as there's a quest to complete 5 of the old school Burning Crusade Time Walking dungeons, which are Blood Furnace, Botanica, Magister's Terrace, Mana Tombs, Shattered Halls, and Underbog. And this can get you a cache of normal Vault of the Incarnates reward. And also, of course, Black Temple is back, and that's for time walking groups of 10 to 30 players. It drops 389 eye level gear for max level characters, and of course, if you're someone who already has the Warglaze of Azeroth, you can go in there on your Demon Hunter, and you can kill Illidan, and it will allow you to get the achievement that lets you mog the Warglaze of Azeroth whenever you want over whatever weapons you're using that are glaives that make sense for it to mog. So, definitely one of those weeks where pretty good for characters who are level 50 and above to get some leveling time in during, doing some Blood Furnace and Botanica and whatnot. It's also a good period of time for players who are trying to catch up to get that cache of rewards, as well as a little bit of gear. So if you're looking to do some familiar dungeons to get some gear, because maybe these are things you've seen a lot more before and you haven't jumped into the new dungeons all that much, this is a good thing that you can go and do.
Yeah, for sure. This is, I think, just as it turns out, the way like the raid is structured and the loot table is set up, this is even a bit later into the season. This is still potentially valuable to do for, for raiding tunes if you're missing like a key item from Vault of the Incarnates, because there can be a lot of different stuff in this cache. It could be one of the rings, it could be one of the unique weapons. Hunters and evokers especially might be shooting for. There's a lot of really good and interesting raid trinkets, and those 2 rings are game changers. I mean, if you've had bad luck, this is, I don't know, maybe an hour and a half of your time. These dungeons go fast anymore. Time walking tuning has been really, really low, I feel like, so far this expansion. And these dungeons should be quick runs. They're pretty simple for the most part, with the possible exception of like Botanica and maybe Magister's Terrace. You could rip a Manic Reef Torch from here or something, and even at normal mode item level, it's still potentially a game-changing item. So it's worth it. I mean, it's worth doing this unless you're decked. If it really doesn't matter to you, if there's nothing in Vault of the Incarnates that you want for your tune, then obviously this is not going to be super valuable for you. If there's anything you're fishing for on that level, like the unique rings, the trinkets, or weapon, like you might get it from here, and it's very a low effort bar to get the reward. So I recommend it. I'm gonna probably try to do this on both of my tunes this week. And yeah, Black Temple could be a good option, I guess, if you're kind of burnt on doing like normal Vault and Heroic's not really going anywhere for you, then at least it's some variety. Black Temple it's a pretty well done time walking raid. It's pretty doable. I felt like Black Temple was like middle of the road. Old War is a little tricky because the group size tuning just ends up being weird in certain instances. And I think Firelands came at the best, but Black Temple is certainly a fun time. So if your team needs some variety this week and you don't want to step into normal Vault, then maybe do it. If you're heroicing up, then like you really got to love the variety to go do it, because I don't think it's even going to be, you're not going to see anything in there that is going to make a difference for you versus even another shot at, like, again, the rare items in Vault of the Incarnates.
I always find it funny to go back and do this time walking dungeon in particular, because you now have demon hunters and monks and evokers and all these things, death knights, all these things that didn't exist back when the initial encounters existed. And so there's always something that's just a little bit wacky to have these new classes in there killing off these bosses and using abilities. Even your own class has developed so much since then that you're using abilities that were never really, the bosses were never designed around you having. So it's kind of neat to get in there and mess stuff up. It's a good time. A little nostalgia trip too for those of us who are around for it. All right, you want to be sure you're doing your Aiding the Accord, your Siege on Dragonbane Keep, Community Feasts, Shakar Hunting Grounds, Primal Storms, Cobalt Assembly rep, your Obsidian rep, and of course your profession stuff for Artisans Consortium and weekly profession quests to get that all done. That's all the good stuff. Although, as Jason said, if you're sort of hitting that rep cap out point and you're not super interested in the Paragon bags, some of these start to fall off a little bit as far as their importance to you. It's really up to you to decide on how you want to spend your time doing the game. But the dungeon quests this week are Uldaman and, of course, Uldaman 2 Judgment Day. That is double Uldaman week. If you're someone who's wanting to do dungeon quests, you just got to pick up both these quests, do Uldaman once, and get double the rewards, which is awesome. So if that's something you can knock out, that'd be good for you. PvP-wise...
It's good. It stinks that... See, these can be any dungeons that are... in the game, I guess. Yeah. Or maybe they're just like Dragonflight dungeons. So some of the quest dungeons are in the Keystone pool and some of them aren't. And it stinks when this is 2 weeks in a row where we've had dungeon quests that aren't in the Keystone pool. And it's, if you're doing it specifically to do the quest, I would recommend doing normal mode. If you just want the rep rewards and stuff, just do it on normal and just blast through it. Why even bother doing it on heroic? If you're somebody who's doing like Keystone level dungeons or whatever, just do it as fast as you possibly can, I think.
It's a healthy suggestion to say that these being Keystone dungeons just makes sense, because it's then something that's beneficial to every player as opposed to those who just choose to want to like slam through a normal. So yeah, I can respect that, definitely.
It's just weird. I guess it's kind of weird that it can be one or the other, right? It can be either a Keystone dungeon or not a Keystone dungeon.
Yeah.
But if it's a Keystone dungeon, you can do the quest in the Keystone dungeon.
Yeah.
It would almost be better to not do it that way, although that would be obnoxious. Like, oh, well, you have to do this. There's some story quests that are like that where you have to get a specific item out of the dungeon, so you can't do it on Keystone. But yeah, it stinks when both dungeon quests aren't in the Keystone pool.
Yeah. PvP quests, Epic Battlegrounds, Rated Battlegrounds, as well as the War Mode quest for Sparks of Life you can pick up inside Thaldraszus. So if you're doing Epic Battlegrounds or any Rated BGs this week, I did a lot of Rated BGs last expansion. I haven't touched them yet this one. But yeah, it's a good time. I mean, if you can find a good group, at least like 3 or 4 people who you regularly sort of group up with others with for Rated Battlegrounds, you can have a lot of fun because 3 or 4 people can make a big difference in a lot of these. So have a good time, enjoy it, and pick up these quests to get the extra rewards for the extra conquest and valor, and not valor, sorry, conquest and honor, and see what you can knock out. Maybe get some wins, get some rating, and maybe then you get some more vault rewards, which would be cool. The PvP Brawl is classic Ashran, which I still don't understand anyone who actually goes and does these things. Classic Ashran is literally its first iteration of Ashran, as opposed to just running into the battlefield, which was a really neat concept that hadn't been around since vanilla, that they had inside Warlords of Draenor, where you could actually just walk into the space where there was a battleground. I guess a little bit inside Wrath with the zone that was entirely a battleground area you could technically fall into, because if you flew over it while it went into PvP mode, you then just fell out of the sky into the battleground. It's just a really large space at Classic Ashran with a lot of objectives, a lot of gathering artifact fragments and turning them into summoned creatures to sort of push. And it's one of those ones that you could start at 8 a.m. and not be done by 11 o'clock when you're thinking about getting some lunch. And that was a little bit crazy that was the thing. So if you want to experience some Classic Ashran, hop in there, but that's not on my list of things to do for this week.
Me neither. Although I will say there is an audience that did like that iteration of Ashran. Yeah. I agree that I don't want to do it, but I mean, it's kind of cool that they brought it in as a brawl. Mm-hmm. The thing that struck me this week when I was putting the notes together and like updating the brawl for the week is last week we had South Shore versus Terran Mill, which needs essentially no explanation. There is no technique. There's really nothing that happens in there. It's just HKs until one team wins. This is the complete opposite of that, right? Like nothing could be a starker contrast to South Shore versus Terran Mill than Classic Ashran.
Yeah,
like
true.
There's a lot going on here. There are meta strategies to know about. There's all kinds of different stuff that happens inside the instanced zone of the brawl. So if you miss Ashran from 2014, then this week is your chance to get back in there. And if you're like, wow, this sounds really weird, I should check it out, then yeah, I mean, this brawl is for you, I guess.
Yeah. World boss for this week is Strunran, the Sky's Misery. It's the big storm proto-dragon in Unarmed Plains. So if you're looking for some 395 loot, you can find that there. It's dropping your plate feet, mail waist, leather legs, cloth wrist, and a primary stat trinket with a haste proc. Mythic Plus affixes for the week are Tyrannical, Bolstering, and Volcanic. So you got boss enemies have more health and deal increased damage. When slain, non-boss enemies, Deathcry empowers their nearby allies, increasing their health and damage. And while in combat, enemies occasionally cause gouts of flame to erupt beneath the feet of distant players. So this is actually probably one of the better weeks. It's kind of weird to say that, but it really is. Like, Volcanic can be an issue when it actually overlaps with Thundering, because you can have situations where you're running to try and meet up with your Thundering partner and you get booped into the air, and that is enough time that causes you some big issues. It can be something where there's already enough space denial inside a room that adding Volcanic to it is kind of a problem for players, but it's not super tricky to deal with, and it mainly focuses distant players, like your ranged people. So if you have one distant healer, one druid who's like back there healing everybody and everyone else is sort of doing melee stuff, that druid's going to get the majority of Volcanics. They're just going to be shifting their feet all the time, dealing with Volcanic, while everyone else kind of has free reign of the space, which is really nice. So I think there's no real large symbiosis that happens between Volcanic and Tyrannical. There's nothing really with Bolstering and Volcanic. They're just 3 affixes that you're sort of experiencing. Bolstering itself, obviously you have to be careful that you're not building a boss. It does have a duration that wears off, so you can actually, handle it that way if you want, by just AoEing down a pack, having one mob left up, waiting or kiting that mob around for a bit until it finally loses its bolstering buff and then killing it, if that's what you want to do. But in general, just being aware of how many mobs you're pulling and how evenly you're killing them, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, it's I agree with you. I think this is overall like a pretty good tyrannical week. Volcanic, like anytime there's sort of a disruption or displacement mechanic, anything that forces you to move in a way that you wouldn't otherwise, like my initial thought is that, that can be bad with Thundering. It certainly can. I would say that Volcanic is probably one of the, least disruptive mechanics in that kind of area. Like you mentioned, I mean, you can have a distant player kind of bait the Volcanics out, and then most of the rest of the group doesn't really need to worry about it. So that's good. Bolstering, like you said, the duration change was great, because before it used to just continue to stack up, and eventually your only option was to kill the thing or wipe and have it reset, or I guess everybody could shadow meld and vanish and reset it. And that was it. It doesn't do that anymore. So you can just kind of power through the bolster, and it's not that bad. It's not going to cost you as much time as a big mistake would have a few years ago. I will say, this dungeon pool, the tuning and everything, it just feels tough, and tyrannical bosses are tough. The scaling is just, the dungeons scale more per rank than they did in Shadowlands, and you can feel it for sure. So tyrannical, even on its own, can be kind of like shocking sometimes with the amount of damage that could go out from a mechanic, or just like how long you have to be in combat with a boss. So that, that's something I'm feeling, I think, a bit as I try to work my way up the ranks here. But overall, I mean, I think this is a good week to get some tyrannical score. If you want to work your way up the ranks, you got to get score from tyrannical and fort dungeons, right? So this is a good tyrannical week to do it. I think the thing I would say would be try to get in combat with everything that you think you're going to pull, and try to kill it as evenly as you can, versus maybe like chain pulling and dragging some low health mobs into a new pack, because then you're just giving them a bunch of extra health for no reason. So
yeah,
that's one thing to probably try to avoid. Like, just set up a couple pulls. If you're going to double or triple up on packs, then get them all and then start cleaving them down. And if you have like a druid or a hunter, somebody who can kind of easily bait out those volcanics and then just scoot up, it's perfect. Takes a lot of pressure off everybody else. So yeah, I'm expecting a pretty good week out there for sure.
Yeah. Another note on Mythic Plus, the MDI kicks off this weekend. The time trials happened on February 1st. Those obviously all wrapped up. So this weekend at 1 p.m. Eastern, Twitch and YouTube, I think both areas I think now have it. You're going to be able to watch your MDI stuff as that rolls out on Saturday and Sunday. So feel free to tune in if that's something you want to watch.
Yeah, that's true. The YouTube exclusivity has expired. So all of the mainline WoW esports are back live on Twitch and YouTube simulcast, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So, this season is the traditional like foot race style format. They are going to do a great push season after that, which I find more interesting. But, we haven't been talking a lot about esports on the show of late, because I think it's fair to say neither you or I are really paying that much attention to AWC or anything like that. But one thing about MDI that's really cool early on, especially, is getting to see this dungeon pool that most of us as players are still learning, right? We're still trying to figure out kind of, the ins and outs of some of these dungeons, trying to optimize routes, trying to figure out exactly which mobs do what thing, or how you can exploit them or bend the rules a little bit to maybe shave off a pull, or, skip something that you didn't want to deal with, or make something unexpected happen in the dungeon. That can, give you a big advantage against a timer. That's the kind of stuff that I think MDI brings out early on that's really valuable and cool, because it's on such a big stage for the game, Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how MDI this weekend starts to kind of change the metagame approach in our Keystone dungeons at home. Just the way that we play it, and I want to check out as much of it as I can to see if I can get a feel for how they handle some of these fresher dungeons in the pool.
Yeah, I just love seeing the tips and tricks that these guys come up with. Typically, I watch them in like YouTube highlights after the fact, or people breaking down in a more analytical way after the fact what teams were doing inside some cases. But it can be exciting for some players to watch it live and sort of as they're doing Mythic Plus on one monitor, they have MDI on the other, and they're glancing over and seeing and learning things as they actually play the game. That can be a fun experience. So as long as you're not distracted so much that you're wiping your group, just, be careful with that one. But it's a good time. So I'm glad they're bringing it back. And as you said, I'm more excited for Great Push when that kicks around in a little bit. All right. Loves in the Air is still on. It runs until the 20th. So you got a few days left. Characters level 16 above you get a chance to acquire the X45 Heartbreaker mount. And there is bad luck protection in place, where the first time you try every day increases your chance of getting it by a little bit. So we are seeing more people actually even reaching out to us and saying, hey, I actually got my mount. The bad luck protection thing is working. It is helping. So I'm glad to hear that, they've made a change that players are reacting positively to when it comes to this mount. So good to hear.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't been doing this consistently. I've done it a few times. Like when I think about it, if I'm playing WoW that day, I'll do it, even though I don't particularly care for the mount or really want to use it. But it's just like, whatever, it's here, I'll do it. It's a 3-minute process, right?
Yeah.
I haven't gotten it yet. I've seen a few people that I know on Twitter or whatever get it this year, which is awesome to see. But it isn't really. It's not streak protection. It's just a bonus to your first. It's a bonus drop chance your first kill of the day, but it doesn't accumulate where it, like it used to be with like bonus roll coins or something, where you'd have that streak protection in the background, where it's like, oh, the more you don't get it, the more likely you are to get it next time. It doesn't work like that, but your first, reportedly, your first kill of the day has a greatly increased drop chance. So, we got a few days left here. Good luck to everybody still trying to get the rocket. I'll probably do it a few more times, but I will have no real emotional reaction to it one way or the other. It's a thing that's there, right? It's like if I'm logged in, all right, I'll push I, I'll do the thing, and we'll see what happens.
Right.
But yeah, we're running a little low on time here for the event. So if there's anything you want off the vendors or whatever, make sure you're collecting all of your stuff and wrapping it all up here.
Yeah, lots of pets and mounts and transmog and all that kind of stuff. So be sure you're getting out there and taking care of all of the stuff you want to grab. Next week is the Hatching of the Hippogriffs event. This is one of the cuter events that exists. It's only available on the 23rd, so on Thursday next week. So be sure that you are hopping in there and taking advantage. We're giving you a 1-week notice so you can make time for it now and plan it out. Because we'll talk about it again, obviously, next week as well. But
and who knows when we're going to record?
Yeah, there's that too. I mean, I
gotta make sure we get out in front of the micro holidays. But this is one of my favorites. Yeah. I love Hatching in the Hippogriffs. I forgot to do it last year, and I remembered when it was too late to do anything about it. This takes place in Feralus, and it doesn't really ask a lot of you, and then you get to have a little baby hippogriff just chill with you on your shoulder for like a week, as long as you don't go into any PvP instances, I guess. So.
Yes, because they're overpowered with these
kinds of things
in those situations.
Right? Yeah, it's the buff is so huge. Yeah. No, it's because it just strips you of all of your buffs when you enter the instance, which includes your hippogriff friend. So
and your little boomkin friends too.
Oh yeah, that was tragic. That one year, I got all 5 of them, and then I did like a brawl or something, and then I was like, hey, what happened to my boomkins? And yeah. So do it on your non-PvP tunes and hang out with your hippogriff. But that's next week. And we just want to make sure that we mention it in case we end up recording like next Thursday and then we didn't get to talk about it at all.
Yeah. There were some hotfixes that happened. Class-wise, it was mostly just bug fixes towards particular abilities not reacting the right way they meant to, or one of the good ones that it here is they fixed an issue with Pain of Death for Shadow Priests, sometimes dealing more damage than intended. The reason why I say that's a good thing is because that's more of a PvP-related thing. That they're tweaking, and it's not surprising to see some of this coming out with AWC stuff happening recently. So, they're just tweaking a few things there, class and talent wise. If you want to have a look at the notes, you can easily find those changes in particular. As far
Yeah,
as
mostly bug fixes this week.
Yeah.
It's like bug fixes, behavior changes, not dialing knobs. That was last week.
Yeah. In dragon riding, they tamed the volume of exertions for dragon riding mounts. They've settled down since taking flight. Little cute note there at the end.
I assume this means like the amount of noise that the dragon riding mounts make, which is good. Like, it's cool that they do that, but if you're just like AFK in Valdrakken, it's a little much. Like, we get it. There's dragons here. So yeah, I think that's a good change. I haven't really spent enough time just like idling in town or anything to get a feel for how much of a change this is, but I like the idea.
Yeah. As far as the raid goes, obviously Resogatz is where we'll start off with this. On Heroic, health reduced by 5%, reduce the rate that Vault integrity drains during the intermission, the Primalist Strike on Heroic difficulty, the Tempest Wing periodic damage reduced by 20% on Heroic, and Volatile Current damage reduced by 15% on Heroic. Sorry, that's just across the board, I guess, because it's not just specifically Heroic. The other ones were Mythic. They reduced the push effect of Hurricane Wing on Mythic difficulty. Flamesworn Herald's Flame Shield now absorbs 45% as opposed to 55% of Resogatz's max health. Of the Flamesworn Herald's max health. Frostforged Zealot's Shattering Shroud now absorbs 20% less healing on Mythic. Stormseeker Acolyte's Ascension now increases by 150% as opposed to 300%, so that's split in half. And then Tempest Wing periodic damage reduced by 20%. So it's, lots of large number changes. When I'm seeing things that are 20% or above being changed on stuff, in some cases a 50% nerf to an ability, that is large changes, which means they want to see more teams not just killing this boss, but trying this boss. As Jason sort of said, a lot of teams look to kill rates and go, is it worth us even having to look at this boss? And it's like, well, you know what? Only 150 teams have even killed this on, this difficulty versus the one before it where 3,000 have killed that one. Let's just leave that 151 alone until we see that number come up so that we know that it's in a better place for people. And that's what they do. And so Blizzard then goes, hey, you know what? We need to actually nerf this boss to make it more attractive to players and make them feel like it's worth their time to put the effort in for it. So here it is. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, I think these nerfs are maybe a little overdue, but I know they want to be cautious with this stuff to a degree, right? You don't want to cut the legs out from under, especially the last boss, too early. But we're a good chunk into the season now, and yeah, I mean, I can only really speak to the Heroic fight. I mean, health reduction is huge because Resogatz leaves the main platform at a health percentage, and if you don't get her off of that platform, some really nasty overlaps start to happen. So now you have a much bigger window. I mean, 5% is a lot of health to chunk off of this boss, like right away. This is the first round of nerfs. So that's great. And then Tempest Wing hurts so bad. Like, it was one of the things that was creating those kind of attrition kills I was mentioning earlier in phase 2. This is the thing that Resogatz sends out from her. It's like the lightning ring that you have to run through and you take damage from it touching you. It's similar to other boss mechanics we've seen, like the pushback ring. So that's a big damage reduction on that. And similarly, like Volatile Current, that's the thing that everybody gets a circle around them and it pops out an ad that you then have to soft CC, which then pops out an ad that you have to soft CC. This hits everybody in the raid. So reducing the damage that it does by 15% is a lot. Both of those abilities hit the entire raid, and there's really not anything you can do about that, right? There's no like counterplay to taking this damage. So nice to see that come down. Not exactly sure how the Vault integrity draining more slowly during first intermission will feel, or like what the ultimate impact will be on the team. I mean, I guess it gives you more time to deal with those ads in the intermission. You have to split the raid in half, and then each team has a set of there's like 3 storm elementals and they pop out other ads and you got to run around the platform and kill them all before you go to the phase 2 platform. we were basically finding that if everybody was alive, we had a comfortable amount of time to get around the platform and get, set up for phase 2. And if people were dead, then we didn't, and we just couldn't have people dead. So that, which makes sense, right? So I think this will be okay if you're really feeling, throughput pressure and you're not getting through the intermission because stuff's not dead like that. I think it'll help with that. But yeah, overall, I mean, these are great to see. I think most specifically for us, the health reduction will help prevent wasted phase 1 pulls, right? Where it's like, oh, we had something happened and we had some weird issue, or we just don't have a lot of damage tonight and we got another set of volatile current and we couldn't deal with it and the overlaps were bad and we died. Like that should happen almost never at this point with the amount of damage that we have. And volatile current it can be a very punishing mechanic because it also goes out around other stuff that has like fall off damage effects or whatever. So just reducing the overall bursty damage going out on the raid, and Tempest Wing was the other thing that was just creating phase 2 death. So I think this bodes really well for us for like, okay, it's time to just push this prog. It's time to get pulls on this boss and just get it over with. So I've been waiting for this, for a couple weeks now, hoping that they would pull the trigger on it, and it's great to see. I'm glad they did it, and I can't wait to see how this boss feels this week.
Yeah. Also, big shout out to all the Horde teams out there who ended up filling in the top 100 kills for Mythic. Obviously, the Hall of Fame is now closed for Horde side, as 100 teams have gotten in. And on the same note, you can't help but mention the Alliance, where there's 28 teams that have finished killing this boss. This is, normal. It's what we normally see. Actually, it's a little bit... There's actually a few more Alliance teams than I expected. Typically, when Horde Hall of Fame closes, there's like 22 teams on Alliance side, or 21 that have actually killed the last boss. So props to those extra teams that got in there this time around.
That's actually a lot of Alliance teams for sure.
Yeah. But I would expect that with these nerfs, we'll see obviously that number jump from 28 to like 60 or 70 something over the next week. And then maybe another week or two before it actually closes out on Alliance side. This is what they're wanting to do, right? They're wanting to get this closed out because we have Cross-Realm Mythic that's opened up, right? So you can now bring in people from other teams to support your team as long as there's 16 or more players on your server in your guild on your team. Then you're able to actually still get credit for Hall of Fame. So this is where people start bringing in those ringers and those friends to fill out their roster to make sure that things actually fall over dead with the Cross-Realm Mythic opening up. So we will see what happens in the next week. But congrats to those who made it into the Hall of Fame for Horde side. Now it's just about Alliance and how many more teams can squeeze in there that they're looking to fit in.
Right. If you were Horde team number 101, everybody faction change and go do it and get in there. And then I don't know if there's some kind of like lockout period for after you switch, but
there's tracking that happens on it because there was an issue that happened during Battle for Azeroth where a bunch of teams inside China basically were selling Hall of Fame slots by the same group of people moving from guild to guild to guild, swapping around servers and whatnot to help get other guilds Hall of Fame, which was a bit bizarre as far as behavior went, but they were literally selling it for money, and that was something that was very frowned upon. So that's where a few teams that had finished like 104th or 106th actually made it into the top 100, because when they went through and refiltered out all these extra sales that happened and booted all those teams out for the behavior, all these teams that were at like just above 100 suddenly moved into the top 100 on the scoreboard. So it was kind of neat to see all of that happen once they took action against it. As far as Mythic Plus goes, they fixed...
I want to mention one other raid change.
Sure.
Huge quality of life change. Other players in your raid group will no longer be notified when you receive an Ancient Vault artifact. Thank you, Blizzard. Let me explain to you what this means. Ancient Vault artifacts are items that you get from every boss that you kill in there like once a week, I believe. I believe it's like once per week on any difficulty, right? And you turn them in for rep at the rep NPC where the dungeon quests are. That's just like a way to get extra rep from doing the raid. But for whatever reason, these were like on the list for loot toasts when you looted them. So you would show, like in the loot feed that somebody in the group looted these. Well, everybody gets one. So if you have a 30-player group and you kill a boss and everybody loots the boss, then you get to see one at a time that all 30 players got an Ancient Vault artifact.
Right.
It's something that has been driving my team a little up the wall the last few weeks. So I'm really glad that they changed this. It's funny because I think it was just last week, maybe the week before, my co-tank was like really getting under his skin, and he was making a lot of dumb jokes about it, about how we, grats. Oh, you got an Ancient Vault artifact too? Stuff like that. And then now last week they changed it. So very glad to see, keep that feed a little cleaner. We could actually focus on the loot going out.
Yeah. There were similar fixes to Mythic Plus as there were to your actual people-specific classes, where they basically went, hey, there's a bunch of little things that aren't interacting properly or working properly. We're just going to tweak those a bit. An example of that is inside Hall's Valor on Herja, they fixed an issue that would cause Adaptive Swarm to jump to Herja before she engages players. Just not an intended thing. There's a bunch of unintended things that were happening that they sort of went through and tweaked. All of this is very much something we expect to see before an MDI weekend, to make sure that stuff's as solid as it can be. So there was also fixes to Brackenhide Hollow. They did some tweaks to Shrine of the Storm as well, and Underrot. Apparently there were some things that weren't working well there that I guess have a very similar effect. So they went in and tweaked some of that stuff too. Basically, Living Rot's Wave of Decay was sometimes inflicting more damage than it was intended to. I don't want to wipe to Underrot now, please and thank you. So it'd be great if, that wasn't the case.
Right.
Whoever's going back there to like farm mounts or something, like, yeah, I appreciate you for what you're going through.
I mean, remember too, like just a couple weeks ago, we had that problem with BFA level up dungeons being busted and overtuned. So I think this is fallout from that. Plus, any of these dungeons are on the table to make a return as keystones in future seasons of Dragonflight. So who knows, man? Maybe that's something to do with it. Maybe these are getting tweaked and tuned up a little bit to get into the. I don't know if I don't want to go back to either one of these dungeons. By the way, if anybody is listening who is making decisions about maybe the Keystone pool, like I think Underrot maybe Underrot
was good with stuns.
Tolerate.
As long as you had stuns, you were good. Yeah.
Yeah, and as long as the explosive behavior worked properly and didn't trigger off of everything that the last boss spawned.
Right. Yeah, that too.
Shrine
was
of the
hilarious.
Storm. I think we just live without Shrine of the Storm. Very cool dungeon thematically. I love the way that dungeon is built. Like the whole atmosphere in there is so cool. The story that you kind of play through is great. Not my favorite keystone. So if the stuff is like, oh well, this is way overtuned baseline, which is going to make it impossible to have it be a satisfying keystone, just don't worry about it. Let's do some other dungeons maybe.
Yeah, the only thing about Shrine of the Storms was there were some fun routes in there of what people were doing, where you'd invis Warlock gates to skip things. There was a lot of like weird dynamics that existed there, but I agree that it was definitely not my favorite one to run, and was the one that I found was most prone to having someone die and the rest of the group give up because they were just like, oh, whatever, we're never going to make it now. That happened a lot in that particular place. There was also like 2 different bosses that had long extended lore aspects, so you can think you're really good on the time going through the dungeon, then you hit there and suddenly 35 seconds later you're actually starting to fight the boss and you're like, oh, okay, we're way tighter than I thought we were because I didn't count that in.
Yeah.
So anyways, they did fix to the Jade Bright Foreseer mount, where apparently it was leaving horseshoes behind, and now it just leaves behind splashes of water, which is much cooler. So, yeah, that's a nice one for them to fix. As far as Blue Posts go, something we wanted to talk about, this is actually a 10.0.7 feature that's coming up called the Zaskara Vaults. And the Zaskara Vaults are, the best way to describe it is, if you were around for the Isle of Thunder, there was a vault that you essentially would earn keys to and open up and have your own little mini solo dungeon event that you could do and run through. It's back. They're doing one with this vault as well. It's going to be a vault that you run through and can get different rewards for, solo dungeon experience. But what this Blue Post in particular focused on was some mechanics for that. And one of those mechanics is in a ring that you get, and these Primordial Stones that you socket into the ring. And they compare this ring to the trinket that you got from Mechagon, the pocket-sized computational device that had some really funky effects that could exist on it. As far as like, it could be everything from more damage, from like boosting up your haste on like a procced cooldown or something along those lines, to just all sorts of wacky stuff. I think some of them were like lets you breathe underwater or swim faster, or there was like a bunch of odd different things that existed in it. So they're doing something similar with this ring, and you're going to get these Primordial Stones. And Jason, you want to talk a little bit about these Primordial Stones and what's going on with them?
Yeah. So now this is a bit controversial, and from the impression that I'm getting here is that the reason it's controversial is because it dredges up a lot of bad memories and psychic damage that we've taken over the years, and not because of anything specific with the implementation. And people just haven't had a chance to check it out on PTR, or it's not live, obviously, right? Let me read to you what Kyvax writes about kind of how you acquire the Onyx Amulet and what you do with the Primordial Stones. He says, when it comes to acquiring these, the Zaskara Vaults are where you get Primordial Stones and can be accessed with keys you'll receive from rares and chests across the Forbidden Reach. Forbidden Reach being the Drakthir Evoker starting zone, which is going to be outdoor content at max level in 10.0.7. The keys will be bind on account, so you can get your alts into the Zaskara Vaults easily. You can crush your Primordial Stones into fragments, which can be repurposed into an item to upgrade your favorite stones through your local jewel crafter. You can use these fragments to purchase newer stones from researcher Imareth. While you can't buy specific stones, they come in families, so you'll be able to target the stones you want. Primordial Stones can be unsocketed from the amulet, which makes it sound like you can take them out intact and swap them around, which is very cool. Kyvax goes on to say, our intent here is to minimize random outcomes so that you can customize and experiment with your Onyx Amulet, similar to the Mechagon Trinket, the pocket-sized computation device. Being able to upgrade your favorite stones will also increase the item level of the ring up to 424, allowing its power to scale up in a deterministic way. Of course, given its maximal item level, we expect you'll replace it with something better in Dragonflight Season 2. So if we look at all that in context, what this really seems like is a way to kind of funnel some extra power to players late in the season, right? This is not an item or a feature that, I mean, they're telling us right now this is not going to be important after Season 2. Which I think is good to know. I can't really remember them doing something like this in the recent history of the game. This is essentially like a power catch-up is what it sounds like to me. And from what I've heard of impressions of people playing on PTR, it doesn't really take that long to get into the experience, do the vaults, get your ring, and get a bunch of the different stones. And that's all good. And it sounds like you can essentially target what you want to socket into the ring, and that you can reuse different stones that you have socketed without consuming them, potentially. I haven't tested it, but that's what it sounds like to me when he says can be unsocketed, although maybe that means you can just socket over them and they're destroyed. But yeah, either way, if they're easy enough to grab the stones that you want, then I think it's okay. I guess the question is, what is doing the Zaskara Vault solo instance dungeon with quote-unquote fun puzzles to solve? Is it fun? If it's fun, then cool. And if it's decently rewarding, then I think that's a nice little addition late in the season. You get another vector for power. I think, in my opinion, the what was it called? The pocket-sized computation device, I think, was one of the cooler items they put in the game in a long time. I had a really good time with that in mid-BFA, and I hung on to that for a long time. I think I used it into early, Season 4 BFA, whatever. Yeah, it would have been Season 4, I guess. It was cool to have this item that had some interesting effects and that you could kind of customize to do the thing that you wanted it to do, right? You get the stat that you wanted to get off of it or whatever. Playing the tank main and really only playing tank specs, like I feel left out on some of the stuff sometimes, right? Because I have to do certain things in a certain way. My gear needs to serve a particular purpose or whatever. And the pocket-sized computation device was something everybody was messing around with and had all kinds of cool different effects that you could mix and match on. So I like the idea of carrying that forward and doing like a different take on it for this expansion. I think people heard about this and immediately started having domination socket, domination shard flashbacks. It sounds like this is not anywhere near that level of like time commitment to get it powered up. Like it's not even in the same stratosphere of the kind of difficulty and time bar that was in Shadowlands Season 2 with the domination sockets. And also, it sounds like, I don't know, man. This stuff just sounds like a cool bonus potentially if you're not decked out and you want to take advantage of it, you know? I think that's where they're trying to get it to land. It's like if you're not pulling 421s out of your vault on a weekly basis, you know, then you can really go in on this ring and get some cool power and maybe, you know, get to that next rank that you're looking for in your prog or your rating or what have you. So I think it could be a cool addition. It is, you know, it's great that the keys and stuff are bind on account too, and they're going to be that way right up front. It's a little tough with alts right now because a lot of stuff is more opened up than it was before, and that's great. And it definitely saves you time, and it saves you the repetitiveness of having to do certain content over and over again. It also speeds up stuff like your renown rep, but the problem is when you try to get in an upper echelon of power, like your only option is to get the concentrated essences from doing 16 pluses. And you got to do 10 of those at a time to get an item upgraded. And that just doesn't scale too well when you're trying to do that across a big suite of tunes. Now, luckily I'm not in that boat. As we were kind of talking about earlier, I barely played my monk at all. I'm still getting item level upgrades from world quests. But that is kind of a problem, is like you hit this plateau where, okay, well, to really actually get powered up, I have to just start slamming keystone dungeons. And I need to do 10 of them at a shot to get one item upgraded, right, from a profession. This seems like it's something that could be a nice injection of power that maybe is a little bit more dynamic and a little bit less of a time commitment, which is kind of the perfect thing to bring in late in the season, right? Especially if they make this irrelevant early in Season 2, then I just feel like maybe there won't be pressure on people who don't want to do it, that like, oh, you need to be doing this because you got to get your amulet like powered up and you got to get your stones, or else what are you doing? You're so behind. Like if this is coming from the other direction where it's like, okay, you're not where you want to be at the end of Season 1. Here, take this and power up and go get him, champ. You know what I mean? Like that. I think that could be a great addition if that's how it plays out. Yeah,
it's a feature that, and I actually looked up the name of the Swollen Vault, which is what the Isle of Thunder Vault was called, which I now regret the name of, having said that. It was a really fun experience. I really enjoyed. There was like multiple different configurations and different games you could do when you went into it. I enjoyed finding the optimal ways to do it to get the best rewards out of it. That whole experience to me was really fun. But the rewards you were getting weren't like massively gear based. They were primarily currency based, of getting reputation and getting like gold. That's sort of what you got out of it, which was just a nice bonus every week when you took advantage of doing it. And you collected these keys, and the more keys you collected, the more chests you could open as you went through the run. You got different buffs. There was a bunch of stuff that happened with it that was just a lot of fun. I'm sure there's a lot of YouTubes out there for it if you wanted to go and look one up for what that experience was like. I'm hoping this is similar, and I'm hoping that they're not dipping into the problem that you're describing of this feels like a mandatory thing that people have to do because this is the best way to gain character power inside one particular slot for your character, so you have to do it because that's what killed Torghast. And so we just don't want to see that again, right? We want this to be something that you want to do because it's fun. And if anything, sure, earning a whole bunch of bonus reputation or currency would be great. People would love that if that was a way to do this. So I dislike that they're attaching character power to it. I would rather they did the pocket-sized computational device ring aspect with this amulet that you're talking about, and had all of the benefits on it only activate when you're in the vault. So you just go, yeah, it's a big mighty item, but it's only used for the vault, and it's only good in the vault. It's not something that people are going to be wearing outside of the vault. That to me would be a nice aspect for this thing. So hopefully they can find their way towards that direction.
Yeah, true. I mean, I would like it to land more in the realm of like the Pandaria vaults than Torghast or Horrific Visions, right? I think it'd be cool if it was a little bit less combat based and more just, yeah. I mean, they mention they make specific reference to puzzles and stuff, and I think there's definitely like a market for that among the player base. There's some people that hate that kind of stuff, but I do think some people really like it. I like it. I always enjoy the puzzle world quests, and that was, I think, one of the things about Torghast that I enjoyed was when they would throw in, a puzzle to get an anima power or something. So if it leans more that way, then I think that would be cool. I should try to carve out some time to check it out on PTR. I don't know if I'm going to be able to, but this is the kind of thing I would like to play on PTR, right? Because you're going to be doing it a bunch if you're doing it. It's repeatable. Just get a feel for how it works and what happens. But yeah, I mean, I guess we'll see how people feel about it, because it is a bit of a different take on injecting some catch up late in the season instead of, just doing a big catch up thing each season roll, negating the previous season. But it's like, we got to wait, we're 3 months out from the next season. Probably just wait until the new stuff comes out to really start dumping time in. That's kind of a problem that we run into. I guess we'll see how it feels, and we'll see ultimately how people react to it and how it's implemented. I mean, for me, like, as I kind of mentioned earlier too, I just want like a reason to play the game. I want something to do. And if this is that, and then I get like a 424 ring that I can stat and add some cool effects onto in a way that feels good to have to close out the season, then I think it's a huge win. I mean, I log in and I'm like, what do I want to do? Well, nothing, I guess. Nobody's online. All right, well, I'm going to go do something else. And, having the vaults in the, there's a lot of stuff called vault in the game right now, but having this Zaskara Vault thing, I mean, I think that could be positioned really well to kind of, ramp us out of season 1 and into the next phase for Dragonflight. So we'll see. I think, some of the doomsaying, I think is understandable because of some of the stuff they've implemented in the game over the last few years. But, from firsthand feedback I've seen from people that I trust and respect, and from the way they're laying it out here, I think this would be a nice bonus as season 1 starts to get a little stale.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, well, with that, I want to take a moment here to thank our patrons. They contribute a lot to our show and help us to, improve on the content we create. Today, I'm giving a special shout out to Arajian, Celian, Kapawi, Max, Mibble the Mighty, Nick, Shorel, Viper14, and Zalius. Thank you so much for all the efforts that you all put in, as well as all the rest of our patrons. We really appreciate you all. Hosting these episodes has expenses, so does posting them, so does all the stuff that goes along with running the business. So we really appreciate everything that our patrons give. A big shout out and thank you to our newest patron, GBT7. Thank you so much for hopping in and supporting the show. If you're trying to find our Patreon, you can find it over at patreon.com/thestartingzone. And Jason, it's been a great year so far for Patreon, and we've really, really enjoyed the support we got from everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you, patrons, so much. It means a lot. It really does make a huge difference in being able to keep the show on track and being able to do what we want with the show. And we appreciate your support so much. It really does. It helps us produce the show as consistently as we've been able to, and actually, pay to have it in a place where you can go get it. So thank you all so much, and welcome GBT7. Thank you for chipping in, and we appreciate you.
Yeah. Another great way to support the show is to leave us those 5-star reviews. They really help out our show. They boost us up those charts, help more people find our show. And this one comes in from Akayan from Great Britain, entitled Great Podcast. It says, there's no better podcast to keep up to date with what's going on with World of Warcraft. It makes it easy to figure out what I might want to do each week. Yeah, that's the biggest thing that we really wanted to aspire to when we first started the show was... There's a lot of people out there who go, there's nothing to do in WoW. I've done everything. It's all done. And it's like, have you really? Do you have your Ghost Moose from, back in the day doing Legion stuff? Do you have, all the holiday stuff you want to get? There's this Day of Hippogriff stuff coming up. Is that something you want to hop into? Do you want to do some PTR stuff with what's going on with the Vault? Like, there's so many things that happen in and around the game. Sometimes it just takes listening to a couple of guys go, hey, you know what? Here's a list of things, and these are some cool, rewards for it, and this is some fun stuff about it. This might be something you want to check out for you to hop in and feel like there's more to do in the game. So thanks again for the review, and appreciate that we're helping you out finding what you want to do each week in WoW.
Yeah, absolutely. Great to hear. I always love to hear stuff like that about like, the show really helps me figure out how to approach the game or whatever. Like that's always great to hear. And that's a big part of, why we structure the show the way that we do. And even if it's a lot of me talking about stuff I don't want to do in a given week, maybe as it's kind of been the last few weeks here. But thank you so much for taking the time to write in, and glad we could help you out and kind of point you in a direction to go play some WoW. That's great to hear.
Well, even with the "this is stuff I don't want to do" concept, they at least know why, because you explain why you don't want to do it, right?
Right.
So, like, at least in that situation, they might go, hey, you know what? That doesn't sound like something I'm into either. Like, when we talk about classic Ashran, both of us are like, not really something we're too keen on. And someone else might go,
Nah.
3 hours in a battleground, that doesn't sound like something I want to spend my time doing. So, you know what? There's your fair warning, right? You're not going to cue into it by accident.
Oh, that sounds exactly like what I want to be doing.
Exactly.
So
It could be.
cue me up for that.
Yeah, could be. All right. If you folks want to get your hands on some TSC gear, you can find over at TeePublic, that's tepublic.com/stores/the starting zone. Get your hands on shirts and mugs and stickers and that kind of fun stuff. That's going to wrap up episode 565 of The Starting Zone. If you want to check out show notes for this episode or leave us a comment on the show, you can find that over at thestartingzone.com, the official website for the Starting Zone podcast. You can contact us at thestartingzone@gmail.com or reach out to us on Twitter, or you can join our Discord over at thestartingzone.com/discord. And Jason, where can folks find you on the internet?
Best place to find me is always over on Twitter, when you can actually post stuff to it. Although you won't find me posting directly from WoW to it anymore. But you can find me over there at Shieldwald. And you can also find me streaming WoW over on twitch.tv/Shieldwald and sometimes youtube.com/Shieldwald. Streams are usually Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Sundays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, doing raids and keystones and maybe some other stuff if there's other events happening in the game. Although the schedule is all over the place lately because holidays and other special events are not cooperating with my raid schedule. So, I think after this week, we'll probably be back on our typical schedule for a while here. So come say hi.
Yeah. Trying to find me, you can find me on Twitter at Spencer_Downey, or on Twitch at twitch.tv/SpencerHD, or on YouTube at youtube.com/@SpencerHD. And with that, for Jason and myself, we want to say thanks for listening, and jobs done.